This is not a podcast about being broken, although you may have been. This is a podcast about strength for women who find themselves in difficult relationships, including that sometimes difficult one with yourself. We'll look at your relationship through a lens of psychology, faith, and a little dash of my own kind of feminism. We're not fixing them, we're fixing you, and that changes everything. Welcome to Stronger in the Difficult Places. Save yourself, heal your relationships. Listen in. Hello, welcome to Stronger in the Difficult Places. I'm your host, Dr. Zoe, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Today, our topic is Don't Believe Everything You Think. We're going to talk about how this applies to relationships specifically. And my guest today is Joseph Nguyen, and he is the #1 international best-selling book of Don't Believe Everything You Think, which has been published into 40+ languages. He's a writer who helps others realize that they truly are beyond their own thinking and conditioning to live an abundant life free from psychological and emotional suffering. I'm very excited to have him on here. He was a self-published book that has now sold over 700,000 copies. I don't think you have any idea how many. I mean, that's crazy for a success of a self-published author. So his book has a lot of really good nuggets. I have read it, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Joseph and for us to have this conversation. But first up, my win and my fail, as always. My win is that I have overcome my fear of the ocean. I've actually overcome so many fears. And this weekend, I spent in Florida with my family, which was really amazing. And we were in the ocean, which was a lot of fun. And as I was sliding off the top balcony of the boat we were on into the ocean, I kind of had an experience of watching myself doing this thing that used to terrify me. And I just felt a really deep sense of pride. I used to have a very severe phobia of the ocean. In fact, I was riddled with fears most of my early life. Public speaking was one, the ocean was another. Those were two of my biggest ones. And I have been on a mission since I was young to tackle my fears. And you've probably heard me say this before, but if something scares me, I am determined to do it. And I'm determined to do it repeatedly until it not only doesn't scare me anymore, but I enjoy it. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day, and he said to me, he's like, well, you just naturally have that ability to overcome your fears or not be scared of things. And I was like, no. I don't have that innate ability. Innately, I am a terrified little girl. But I do possess something so strong that hates the fear. And so I work against it. I push against it. But it's not because I don't have fears. And it's not because I just innately am good at getting over my fears. It's because I'm super intentional. And I say that because it's possible for you too. You don't have to sit with your fears and just resign yourself to them. I basically practiced exposure therapy on myself by forcing myself to face my fears repeatedly, and that's available to you too. Maybe you need to look for somebody to help you, or maybe you just need to push yourself. It's funny because one of the reasons why I named my daughter Sigourney is because I did not want her to be riddled with fear. And I do believe in the power of names, the names that we give our children, the names that we give our experiences, and Sigourney means the conqueror. It's a name that is rooted in strength and triumph, and I tell her regularly, your name means conqueror, and it's really good to do hard things. It's good to walk through our fears. There's nothing wrong with having fears. We all have them, and the thing to do with them is to face them and walk through them. So that's my win, something that I just, remembered again, and something that I want to share with you because it's available to you too. Whatever you might be fearful of. Okay, so my fail. I am still very much struggling to get my schedule together, and Christmas looming may just take me out this year. It's a reality. I hired an assistant to help me and am still just struggling doing all the things. I think the blessing is that there's so many opportunities coming to me, and there's so many things that I could do, need to do, want to do. I can't do them all. And I need to make sure that I need to get better about my schedule. So my lesson learned with my fails of consistently messing up my schedule is that I need to cut out some things and essentially just not be so available. And it comes down to prioritizing. So if you're in a place of feeling overwhelmed, of feeling like you have too much to do, of feeling like people are just pulling on you right and left, it probably means you need to tighten your boundaries. Our life changes, and sometimes we have boundaries and we have systems set up that are working very well until they aren't. And when those systems stop working, we imagine there must be something wrong with me. No, your life changed. You've got to create new systems. And so that's my fail. I'm definitely failing on the scheduling aspect, but my life has changed. I'm creating new systems. Okay, now I'm so excited to talk to Joseph Nguyen about why we cannot believe everything we think. Listen in. Joseph, I'm so thrilled to have you on the podcast today. I am so excited because often I will have guests on that I haven't actually fully read their books, and you had a wonderful publicist who got me everything I needed, including the hard copy, so I was able to read it, and your book is phenomenal. And I wanted to bring you to my audience to talk about why in the world can we not believe everything we think?
Thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure, and you radiate a lot of warmth and compassion. So I really appreciate that. Why shouldn't we believe everything we think? Well, I always like to answer that question with a question is, what happens if we do believe everything we think?
That's such a good question. Yeah. I think all of us are sitting here, the result of believing way too much of what we think, right?
And that's exactly the source of the majority of our emotional and psychological suffering is if every single thought that we have, we genuinely believe and accept as truth, we will get taken on an emotional roller coaster because anything we see in the news, anything someone says, anything that we see on the internet, on social media, anything our friend says, if we then accept that as truth and that's how the world is, then we are going to become essentially victims of whatever anyone else projects onto us, whether that's their perspective of reality or how they feel about things or their beliefs that may or may not be true. So it's actually quite dangerous to believe everything we think. And I mean, most of us believe most of what we think, but there are some things that we don't believe, maybe like harming other people, right? Like we'll have that intrusive thought or ourselves, and we just don't do it because we know that we probably shouldn't do that or it's not true. So we have that capacity to know what to believe and what not to. And that a lot of times saves us from a lot of trouble. But we don't expand what we question. So I always like to say like what in your mind could be fake news, could be propaganda, so to speak, that is making you feel a way that you don't want to feel in life anymore. And starting with questioning what we're actually thinking is the beginning of a little bit more peace in our lives, because then we don't have to just get whiplash from all these thoughts.
Oh my goodness. That's so good. I've certainly had whiplash, and I've watched many of my clients experience whiplash. Some of the things that I'll say to my clients, especially regarding the things that they're thinking, is listen, if your relationship is going to be damaged or if your relationship is going to end, at least let it be about something real, right? Don't let it be about something that you've created in your mind and an issue you've created in your relationship that doesn't actually exist in this present. Maybe you've taken it from the past and you've brought it in this present and applied it to the present. But let's try to at least have it be about something real.
Yeah. And how do you know that it is real?
How do you? Let's talk about that.
I don't know. I'm asking you, and then we'll explore it and have fun with it.
Yeah. How do you know that a thought is real? Well, one of the things that I always ask my clients is to test it and ask yourself, okay, I'm thinking that. Where's the evidence, right? Where's the real-time evidence in this moment?
Yeah. I love that, because then it begins the process, right? Of, okay, what is an illusion? What is not? Like, what is here now and what is not? Even then, there is still a psychological trap that when we ask, like, is there evidence to support this? A lot of times our minds can create evidence, right? In life, like, if you search for it, you will find it. I think there's
confirmation bias.
Yeah, exactly. There's confirmation bias, and then there's like other forms of government where it's like, show me, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. And it's like you can always find something on someone these days, and that's how people get canceled, right? Like we always make mistakes, so that there's so much evidence towards that, but there's also so much evidence that we are good people too. Like no one is completely 100% bad, no one's 100% completely good. So like having that that questioning mechanism is like, well, we can find both. So it's like, it's less about what we can find. It's more about like, where do you want to place your attention? How do you actually want to feel? Do you want more peace in your life? Do you want joy? Do you want abundance? What do you actually want? Do you want to feel more love? And if that's the case, we need to focus our attention there, because you can find evidence for both. So it's like, you might as well find evidence for the good. And it's not like we're ignoring the bad and just like putting it to the side and like not doing anything with it. It's looking at it and not judging it, because we realize that it's part of us. We're human. Everyone's human. We all make mistakes. But then can we then redirect our energy into something that is more productive, into something that we actually want? And that's the power that we have, is consciously creating the experience that we want, good or bad. And if we don't do it consciously, then we kind of create the bad unconsciously, and it just recycles the trauma that we might have, or the things that we've experienced in the past. So that's kind of the cycle.
So to some extent, it boils down to acceptance, is being able to accept all the things, right? The good and the bad in you and in others, but then taking your lens and shifting it to the good. So I want to talk about this process, because you've had some life experiences that got you to this place of writing this book and understanding that you shouldn't believe everything you think. Can you talk about your personal process and then what the steps are in your book regarding to being able to finally get to that place?
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're asking about more like life experiences and things like that. So in my past, I mean, I grew up, my parents were immigrants that came over here from Vietnam. So they had a very, very difficult life. They fled because Vietnam fell to the communist government. And so they had to escape. Otherwise my dad would either have to fight with the communist army or flee. And then my mom came over here as well. So when we grew up over here, we weren't super well off. It was pretty difficult financially. House almost foreclosed multiple times. And so my parents did a really good job of shielding a lot of that from us in terms, I guess, verbally, but emotionally, we all felt, like my brother and I felt what was going on, how much stress it was putting my parents under. As kids, you don't have to understand, but you can feel it. And that's kind of what I grew up in. So I kind of grew up wanting to help them alleviate a lot of that suffering, because I just felt like that. I feel like they didn't escape the country to come over here to give us a better life, just to like live and die in debt. Like, that's just not what I thought that they deserved. Yeah. So what I did was I, kind of took it upon myself to do everything I could to help them grow their businesses so that they could have some sort of freedom with their lives, a little bit more opportunity, a little bit more money. So that's when I started my advertising company and started to grow that. But doing so was extremely stressful. Starting any company, doing anything on your own, very difficult. I had dropped out of college to do that just because I was learning from professors that didn't run businesses. So I kind of was very awkward and didn't make any sense. So I dropped out to actually learn business from people who actually had businesses, grew that up and grew it with, pretty good success. And eventually I was able to help my mom scale her stores and have a lot of different clients in the meantime. But it was very, very difficult hiring employees, managing people. At the time, like, I accomplished most of what I wanted in life in terms of like money and things like that, but at the cost of my own happiness, at the cost of my own peace. So, and I fell out of love with what I was doing because I was just advertising things I didn't really believe in. And, with that, I had a business partner split, which was bad, went 50 grand into debt at like 21. And then my wife was hospitalized multiple times because she developed a chronic illness called gastroparesis, so paralysis of the stomach. So she had to get a feeding tube and was eating like 200-300 calories a day. And so not knowing if she was going to live or could live, and then not knowing if the feeds she was going to take them or not. Very, very difficult at the time. And I didn't have like the best relationship with my parents at the time too. So all of that combined was quite stressful. And I've kind of slipped into like a depression, if you want to call it that. Constant anxiety every single day, not knowing if clients were going to stay or leave, not knowing if I was going to make enough, right, to like cover the bills and all that. So that's kind of what the difficult part of my life was. And I then searched everywhere I possibly could for the answers to relieve myself of this anxiety, of this depression. I tried all sorts of things. So CBT, like therapy. I tried hypnotherapy. I tried acupuncture, acupressure, like trying to get into Eastern medicine and things like that, like herbal stuff, energy work, Reiki. I did like transcendental meditation, Vipassana meditation. I went to Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation retreat in Cancun for like 7 days. Um, I even went vegan for a while to see if the food I was eating was causing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many different things, inner work, shadow work, studying Eastern, Western philosophies, psychology. Um, and what the most interesting thing about all those modalities was that they all worked.
Mm.
But the issue was that they only worked while I was doing them. So like if it was yoga, it was only when I was doing yoga for like 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it was. If it was meditation, it was during the meditation, I was fine. But immediately after, I would relapse back into chronic anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So that was so puzzling for me. And it wasn't until I finally kind of like hit rock bottom after all those, circumstances that I began to question myself and my own mind because I knew that exhausting all options didn't work. So I had nothing left other than to go within.
Yeah.
And that was where, the beginning of finding the answers were, which was like, if no matter how much I changed in the exterior, it didn't change how I felt internally. So maybe I should try changing things internally, no matter what things look like on the outside. And that was when I began questioning my own thinking. Do I have to believe every single thought that happens? Am I, like what would happen if I just stopped believing all these negative thoughts, all these negative judgments of myself, of other people, of these circumstances? And that was when I realized that I could actually like stop thinking about all the thoughts that I was having and actually begin living. And that was a breath of fresh air. So yeah, it was such an amazing kind of discovery, which was like from Sydney Banks and Michael Neal and a lot of these different teachers and studying Eastern Western philosophies. So it's a culmination of so many different things, but it really at the root of it is beginning to question all these things and seeing like, well, if there's so many people that go through traumas and even similar traumas, how is it possible that someone can, like one person can slip into depression and never get out of it, but another person can have the opposite experience where they're now empowered and they're stronger than ever and more resilient. How is that possible? Mm-hmm. So then I knew that it wasn't the external circumstance, but our own internal perspective of life and our own perspective of the mind. And that's what shifts everything. And thankfully that's the case. Otherwise we would all be a victim of our environments and can't change anything, but we can change and then change the environment too. So it's all from the inside out. So that's kind of like a synopsis of the story.
Thank you for sharing that. You're speaking my language because one of my taglines is we can't fix them. Wait, what's my tagline? We're not fixing them, we're fixing you, and that changes everything, right? I'm going to say that again. We're not fixing them, we're fixing you, and that changes everything. Because especially when I'm talking with women in difficult relationships, the thought, once again, what often goes into their head and what they often speak and say to themselves is, I'm stuck, right? In order for my life to get better, I have to fix this person. And so they tend to just stay in this very stuck place instead of recognizing, oh, wait, I can't control, like you said, the external circumstances. I can't make someone else change. I can't control all of these people around me that I'm in relationship with, but the only person I can control is myself and change. And if I do, guess what? The ripple effect, right? All the things that we already know about how systems work. So thank you for just confirming that, reaffirming that, and the way that it helped you in your life. So in the book, you kind of lay out a framework for getting from a place of believing all of your thoughts, how they sabotage you, to a place of what I call acceptance. What would you call that end state? And when I say end, I know there's no end. We're always practicing, right? We're always practicing. But what would you talk about, or how would you label that place where people are wanting to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. Acceptance. Yeah, acceptance is fantastic for that because that's the birthplace of peace. I call that state peace more than anything else. At peace with yourself, at peace with your mind, no matter what's going on within it. Another word I would use is emotional resilience. So no matter what you're feeling, you know that you're going to be okay and that whatever you're experiencing is temporary, right? And once you kind of have that and understand that you don't need to judge the emotion that you're having. It's fully validated, right? You're allowed to feel these things and you should. And once you do that and without any resistance or any judgment, then it's actually able to pass a lot quicker than we imagine. And the only reason why these emotions, actually, there's neuroscience that confirms this now, where emotions, the time it takes for your body to regulate an emotion is 90 seconds. But the reason why it stays longer is because we think about the experience that we had, judge it, label it, all these different things, and then perpetuate that 90 seconds, and it restarts every single time. So every time you replay that memory in your mind, and how they wronged you and all these things, we then restart that cycle of 90 seconds, and it just goes on until we stop thinking about it, and stop judging it. And yeah, like you said, once you accept that situation for what it is, and you don't try to change it in your mind, you don't wish it were different, none of that, then you're able to drop it. And within generally 90 seconds, the emotion will pass, right? The memory won't pass. The experience or the actual event itself happened. It's not going to change that, but how you feel will change once you allow it to. And that's kind of where it all happens.
I haven't heard that research, and I think that's phenomenal. And my first question, and I think a lot of the first question that someone else might be asking is, okay, that sounds great. How do I stop it so that I end it and I can start that 90 seconds? Like, how do I stop thinking and ruminating on my situation, especially when I'm sitting in a difficult relationship and I have this uncertainty about my life or uncertainty about, where things are going?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many different variables to it, but it really does start with becoming aware of what we're actually thinking. So like you were saying before, the thinking pattern could be, I'm stuck, or like nothing's ever going to change, or no one's going to listen to me, no one believes me. All of these beliefs then keep us where we are. It is exactly what happens. And it keeps those negative emotions bottled up. What doesn't, or what gets suppressed really sticks within us.
Yes.
And it manifests in different ways. So it might become illnesses. It might be chronic, like digestive issues a lot of times. It might be problems with our, kind of like our throat if we're not really expressing ourselves. All sorts of ways that our bodies will try to compensate, right? Or we might, try to relieve ourselves through different addictions, whether it's food, whether it's, entertainment, content, social media. Our bodies will find ways to try to release this, if we don't allow it to. And usually it will turn to something that is not so great for us. So yeah, the first step is really becoming aware that you don't want to experience this anymore. And if that is the case, then we can go on to the next step, right? But there is a framework in the book, which I call like the pause framework. And that is something that we can actively do in real time to begin letting it go. But the first step is really understanding that you can stop thinking about the situation in the way that we're thinking about it. And it's not about suppressing it. It's not about bypassing it or anything like that. It's really holding space for whatever happened, holding space for yourself, holding space for the experience, in a non-judgmental way. What happens
I love what you said. I'm going to just interrupt you real quickly, because I think about my process with that. And what I've noticed is that it's almost like energetically and semantically, how am I trying to explain this? So let's say that I'm in a place, like when we talk about grief is just about loss, right? So if something happens and I feel a sense of sadness, what I notice that I do with myself is I kind of look down on myself and I'll say, oh, okay. Like if I'm feeling something, Zoe, you're sad. Like I acknowledge the feeling. You're sad. That is different than being in a place of like you are like, oh, I'm sad, if that makes sense. I'm saying the same thing to myself, but all I'm doing is just acknowledging, and you said holding space. I'm saying, oh, you're sad. Like, it's okay. That's all you're feeling right now. It's a natural feeling and you're feeling sad, which is different than sitting in it. But I think that's part of the first step is number one, being able to acknowledge it, right? Speak the thing, not press it down, and give yourself space for it.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful way to put it too. And what we're doing in this case, and one of the things that our language is so powerful too, because a lot of times it becomes our reality, what we speak. And when we're saying I'm sad, that means we're identifying with the emotion as if that is us and entirely us, which is not true. What we're doing is we're experiencing sadness, right? And so it's going through us, and it's not like you're sad all the time, like 100% of the time. We experience a range of emotions. And so we are the space in which emotions can flourish and come up. And so that separation right there immediately allows us to become more aware of this thing, rather than identifying with it. Because if we say that I am sad, then we believe that we'll always be sad, that we can't stop this feeling, that we're not in control. And that is very disempowering and also just not true. You're so much more than your emotions. You're so much more than your thoughts.
Yeah.
And if it were true that you were your thoughts, like what happens when that thought passes? Who are you then?
Who are you then? What's your identity?
Who are you when you don't have any thoughts? You're still here.
Right.
Which means you're something beyond those things. You're the one who is aware that you're having thoughts, the space that has the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. And so that is very interesting. So that's why we can actually like judge our own thoughts and say, we want this thought or we don't want this thought. And we can choose what we hold on to or not. And it's probably best that we let go of most of it anyway. For instance, if we're so attached to the water in the river, then we would kind of build up a dam and then block it all off. But what happens after we build a dam is, wildlife begins to dwindle, things begin to die. So everything in life is meant to flow. Same thing is true with our thoughts. Same thing is true with food. Mm-hmm. So if we become what we eat, but we don't keep all of that, in which we eat. And so what would happen if we just ate food and just held it in our bodies for a day? Might be okay. What about a week? What about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, a year? Right. But we're holding on to thoughts for years.
Yes, we are.
Right. So if we hold on to food for, weeks, then we cause indigestion. Our bodies start to kind of break down, and not function properly. The same thing is true for our minds. So everything that comes in is meant to come out. And we're not meant to really hold on to or attach to it. And if that's the case, then we have a very fluid and free mind. But that's what freedom from mind actually is. It's not freedom, of no thought, but actually freedom from thought, where it's like, no matter what thought comes in, you're not really identifying with it anymore. And you can just watch it, just like clouds in the sky, kind of like watching a movie.
Yes.
Right. Knowing that you're not actually in the movie and you're not gonna die, even though it looks like the person on the screen is gonna die.
Yes.
But you being aware of that then allows you to not have to suffer through whatever it is that you're experiencing. And it really changes it.
Oh my goodness. It so does. And I love that you said that, because number one, words are so powerful. And when you're talking about that, and even just interjecting that word experiencing. So I am experiencing sadness, right? I know that energetically, that's what I was saying to myself. Like, it's okay, right. It will pass. But words are so powerful. And so you just changed the way that I'm going to speak to myself when I'm sad, that I will use that word experiencing instead, which is allowing it to, number one, not identify with who I am. Even in the moment, like, I know I'm not that person, but even in this moment, I'm not sadness. I'm just feeling.
Experiencing it. Yeah, and it's so freeing, because, and then you realize that it's not going to last forever. And that is such an empowering place to be, and something that everyone can do. Just starting with changing the way that you talk to yourself. And if you were to, we usually don't talk to ourselves the same way that we talk to a loved one. And that's one of the core problems, right? The language we use in which to communicate with ourselves. It's so powerful. So yeah, definitely start there, changing the vocabulary, and be slowly you're going to start changing how you feel, and then kind of changing your life as a whole because of that. But it's so great to begin there.
I love that. What would you say is the next step?
The next step, so I'll just go through the pause framework because it'll give us a foundation. So the first one is to actually pause. So that's P. And what we're doing is we're actually becoming aware that this is an emotion that might not be as pleasant as other emotions. And what we don't want to do is resist it. Whatever we're feeling, actually, if it is a negative emotion, what's more painful is the resistance to the emotion, not the emotion itself. It's like, I don't want to feel this, so I'm suppressing it. So the fear of experiencing it entirely is much more painful than the actual emotion itself. So pausing, taking deep breaths. And what happens when we take a deep breath is we can only take a deep breath in the present moment. And that's exactly what happens, and where we go when we begin grounding ourselves with our breath. So when we begin taking deep breaths, that's what happens. And you're bringing your attention from your mind to then your body. So that's pause. And then the next letter is A. A is ask yourself, is this thinking making me feel the way that I want?
Okay.
And if it's not, then why are we thinking it?
Right.
So questions are immensely powerful in interjecting, right? Because an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force. Questions act as an external force within our minds to then break the pattern, break the cycle. Otherwise, if we keep thinking, the object in motion, the thought is going to keep going. So ask questions that really challenge our own beliefs, that challenge our own thinking. So is this thinking making me feel the way that I want? Generally, no. So the next step then is you, and it's understand that you have the choice to let go of this line of thinking that's causing you to feel this way. And then S is say and repeat the mantra, thinking is the root cause of suffering. And what I mean by like our thinking is our own judgment of the thoughts, our own judgments of the experiences. That judgment can be like, I shouldn't be experiencing this. A lot of times we like the emotion is bad enough, as if the emotion wasn't bad enough. We'll say, I'm ashamed of myself for feeling this way, or I shouldn't feel this way. And we start beating ourselves up even more on top of the depression or anxiety that we're feeling. And there's a quote, I don't know who it's attributed to, but it's like, if being so hard on yourself worked, it would have worked by now. And so it hasn't. So we probably should change something about that. And of course you don't deserve that either. And so that's the S part of pause. And E is to experience the emotion fully without resistance. So as we're repeating this mantra, what we want to do is hold space for that emotion, but don't resist it. Don't say you shouldn't be experiencing this, and don't be afraid of it. And know that it's only an emotion, and that's it. And so we want to really take it in, to experience it, to breathe into the emotion, figure out where it is in your body, breathe into it, and let it go. And so repeat that process, pause, so P is pause. A is ask, is this thinking making me feel the way that I want? U is understand that you have the choice to let it go, that thinking. S is say and repeat the mantra, thinking is the root cause of suffering. And E is to experience the emotion fully without resistance. So this whole entire process is essentially how you let go of any thinking that is causing suffering, any emotion that you're dealing with that seems very difficult to let go of. And you really do have to trust the process. A lot of times we don't want to let go of the emotion because we feel like we need it in order to operate, or we've identified with it so much that we don't know who we are without the feeling of resentment, the feeling of grief, the feeling of these things. And even if we're going through grief, we even say to ourselves, if we don't feel grief, then we will no longer love that person or love the thing or whatever it is, we say that it's an act of betrayal.
I just had a client say that to me this morning.
Yep.
Her mother died. And if she lets go of the sadness, she's going to forget her mother.
Yep, exactly. And then it's important to ask, is it true that if you don't grieve, for the rest of your life about your mother or your loved one, is it true that you can't honor them? Is it true that you'll forget about them? And is it true that you will no longer love them?
Wow.
And so when we question that, it's absolutely not true. That if we stop grieving, that we stop loving them. And if anything, we can also take the other or alternate perspective. How would your mother want you to feel right now? What would she want you to think? What would she say to you? Would she want you to just stay inside all day, afraid of everything, afraid of loving anyone again because you might lose them, constantly grieving the loss of her and spending all your days and nights doing that? Or would she want you to go out into the world, remember everything that she taught you, and to bring that love that she gave you to other people, right? To carry on the legacy. Like, which one would you think she would say? So, and that's kind of the thought experiment you can kind of run to get yourself out of your own mind. But those are just little techniques here and there that can really help us to stop the pattern of thinking that we have.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful. And, CBT therapy is all about understanding your thoughts and how your thoughts affect your really lens, your behavior, your relationships, everything. And so it's part of the way that I practice too. And so I just really appreciate you being able to bring a little more philosophical and practical lens to just really understanding our thoughts.
Yeah. And I love this perspective so much because it's liberating.
It is.
And this is not something that you have to believe.
Right.
You don't have to believe in a certain religion to do this. You don't have to, actually, you don't even have to agree with what I'm saying. And that's okay too. But see how it resonates with you. Does it align with you? Does it feel like something that is true? Um, and what I would do is actually test it out for yourself and see if it is true rather than hypothetically or, psychologically agreeing, disagreeing. That doesn't really do anything for us until we actually apply it. So then try this, for like 7 days and see how you feel. What would happen if you suspended judgment for the next 7 days
Wow.
of your thoughts, of yourself, of other people, of the world? How do you think you would feel? So don't just believe what I'm saying. Just try it
I
and
love
see.
it.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing. Like, you don't have to believe what I'm saying. You don't have to agree. You don't have to disagree. That's the beauty of like exploring what could be true in this world. And this is not like the truth. This is just like one of the ways to express a truth. And I definitely implore everyone to discover what is true for them, like actually true. And not just true for them, but true for everyone, and what is universally true. Because then I think you're a little bit closer to it.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you so much, Joseph. Is there one last word of encouragement, advice that you could give to a woman who is sitting in a difficult relationship and does feel frustrated and stuck, and yet has this, this small voice that says, I know that I should at least give this a try?
Yeah. I would say the best thing is to let go of the mind, to follow your heart. Because more than likely, I'm not really saying anything that you don't already know.
Mm.
And what you're battling with is not something external, but more so fear itself. More than likely, you already know what to do or know that what you need to do.
Mhm.
That decision is already in your mind, but you may just be a little bit reluctant to take the leap, whether it's expressing how you truly feel, whether it's leaving or staying or finding something else, reaching out for help, whatever the decision is that you know that your heart wants you to do. Um, all that you're really combating is that fear, and realize that fear is just an emotion. It cannot kill you. Um, and if you breathe into it, you realize that you're going to be okay. So definitely follow your heart because it already knows the way. You don't need anyone else to tell you what to do. And if anything, anyone is really of any help, it's really going to be confirming what your heart is saying or has been saying this whole entire time. So you definitely deserve to follow it. Um, and there's always another way, right? There's always another way. In the present moment, there are infinite opportunities and
Mhm.
decisions that we can make. And so tap into that moment. If we keep going back into the past, trying to relive those memories or trying to predict the future, those are breeding grounds for anxiety
Right.
and regret. And we can't change those things because they don't exist. But in the present moment, you always have an opportunity to choose something different, choose to allow yourself to feel the fear, but then do it anyway. Um, and know that you're supported. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast is, you know, speaking volumes to your dedication and commitment to wanting to do something different, to changing. And so, yeah, you're ready. Um, you are love, and you have all the capacity you need in order to create the life that you want. So move towards that fear and know that you'll survive it. And yeah, everything you want is on the other side of it.
It is. It is. Such wise words. Thank you so much, Joseph. I'm just going to put your book up here. Excellent book. Don't believe everything you think. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website at josephnguyen.org. That's JOSEPHNGUYEN.org. You can sign up for my newsletter there. I also have a YouTube channel. It's Joseph Nguyen, so ITS and then Joseph Nguyen. And those are the best places to find me if you want to continue learning more about my work or just exploring yourself further and question your thinking further to see how much peace you can experience.
I love that. I will check out your YouTube. I haven't yet, so I'm excited for that. And I know you can get your books in all the places.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming on, Joseph.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for the wonderfully amazing questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Stronger in the Difficult Places. New episodes will go out on Tuesdays. If you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe so that you will be notified of new episodes, and go over to my website and hop on my email list at zoe@drzoeshaw.com. I will send you weekly encouragement. If this show is helpful, or if you know it may be helpful for a friend, please hit that like button and share it. And if you feel so inclined, I would appreciate a review. Have a strong week.